Hello, how about that? It's not raining today. Oh my God, it's amazing. So, let's try a video back outside, huh? In the shade, of course. So next in chapter 14, they've got trait theories that they talk about a bit. There are many different ideas about traits that we may possess, and these traits make up our personality according to this point of view. So they do mention just a general definition for trait, right? A characteristic pattern of behavior or a disposition, inborn disposition, to feel and act in certain ways, right? And they develop these personality inventories that they use, a bunch of questions to measure these traits. So I mentioned personality inventories, and of course you develop these over time, and we have a number of them that have been developed and are considered pretty good tests now. But a personality inventory has a bunch of questions. It's like it used to be a pencil and paper test. I'm sure it's mostly done online nowadays too, but they have a lot of descriptions. I'm usually happy, I'm an outgoing person, a whole bunch of different, phrases that you say, or you usually answer either true or false to them, or strongly agree to strongly disagree. And these personality inventories started with a whole bunch of questions. And then they do a fancy thing called factor analysis on it to see how well those questions, or not how well, but how those questions clump together into different clumps. Right? Basically, they correlate with each other, right? And then you see how they correlate with each other, how they clump together into different factors. You look at the questions that load together, and then you make a decision. Oh, that seems to measure the personality trait extroversion, right? And so forth. So we've had a lot of different theories over the years to come up with a lot of different traits and different numbers of traits. But basically, yeah, that's personality inventory. Now, a test that's used a lot nowadays is the Mentis. I can't talk today for some reason. Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, or the MMPI, right? So that was originally developed as a test to basically diagnose, problems people had in terms of emotional disorders, various disorders. But over time, it's developed to measure many different things, including personality traits. So and they refer to the fact that these are empirically derived tests too. So once again, you work on these tests over decades to develop good tests. So if you're ever in a class, where you have to develop a quick survey, run a little study, something like that, that's nothing like these tests, right? A lot of effort goes into making these tests being objective and measuring different traits. So I'll just mention that. And of course, they talk about, the fact that a lot of interest nowadays in personality traits is in how much of those traits are heritable or inborn, right? So we have a lot of interest in that nowadays, but it's never 100% biology. But we can have strong pushes to be an introvert or an extrovert, conscientious individual, various forms. So we can have pushes in those directions, but environment is important too. So they have one theory here that they mention right at the beginning of the trait chapter, where these two personality dimensions are used. And, so they overcross like that in that figure right there on page 587. So you got introverted to extroverted being one of those dimensions. Of course, extroverted, I dare say most of you know what extroversion and introversion are. If you're extroverted, you're outgoing, you're friendly, right? You're a sociable person, you talk to others, you like to be a center of attention, you're extroverted. All the way at the other end of that dimension, of course, is introverted, shy, not outgoing, etc., right? So you've got introverted to extroverted, and then the other dimension there is stable to unstable, right? So and that's largely, I suppose, emotional stability is what they're talking about there. So you're either all over the place all the time at one extreme, or you're very emotionally stable at the other extreme. Of course, the truth is most of us fall somewhere in the middle on both of these. So that was an older theory about personality. I guess it's still around, being made of those two dimensions. But the Big Five theory, or the Big Five factors, are the most accepted idea in personality traits nowadays. Right? The Big Five. You've got this on page 590 where they talk about the Big Five. So this theory says there are five, right? 5 personality traits. And they've got them there, and they have this neat little memory thing, right? Just remember the word canoe, C-A-N-O-E, and you can remember these Big 5 personality traits, right? So you got conscientiousness, right? Conscientiousness, one of the Big 5. Once again, you got the two extremes of conscientiousness, and then you got all, the rest of the spectrum falling in the middle, falling in the middle. Words today. Anyway, so all the way at one end, of course, of conscientiousness, you have someone who's very organized, very disciplined, right? Very careful. All the way at the other extreme of conscientiousness, you have somebody, who's completely disorganized, careless, impulsive, can never turn an assignment in on time, that kind of stuff. And then they go on, they mention agreeableness, so you're either very friendly or you're not. And then neuroticism is another one, but that is basically emotional stability versus instability, right? Like the one we just mentioned a moment ago. So you're very emotionally stable or very emotionally unstable and unpredictable, right? And then you have openness, right? Openness to experience. Are you open to new experiences or not? Are you very regimented? You don't want things to pop up out of the blue. You're very traditional. You don't like trying new things, versus all the way at the other extreme, there's crazy people that do, all this crazy stuff, like paragliding and all that crap in Chile. I don't know. There are people that do that. Anyway. And then the last one, of course, is extroversion. Right, like the one we mentioned a moment ago, too. So all the way at one extreme, you have very extroverted individuals. At the other extreme, you have basically introverted individuals. But they call that personality trait or dimension just extroversion. Right? Pardon me. So they mention all of that. And yeah, so if you are an extroverted individual, if you have that kind of, if you're on the extroverted version, end of that extroversion trait, then yeah, you're very outgoing, you're running around, you love to meet new people, all this kind of stuff, right? And of course, that could serve a politician very well, to be extroverted. But then they mention also at the other extreme, you have someone who's very introverted, and they use an example in the book of Jane Goodall, like doing field studies with gorillas in Africa and stuff, where yeah, she was just doing this research by herself, and she was okay doing that. And they do mention in here that they have found evidence of these Big 5 personality traits across cultures, right? And so there's some evidence that you're not, because if you're doing most of your research in America on Americans, it might not apply to everybody. So it's important that they have found some evidence of these Big 5 in other cultures, and they've even found some evidence of these Big 5. Some of them, like in dogs and in animals, right? So yeah, some dogs are just very extroverted. Of course, dogs in general might be more extroverted than cats. Anyway, so there's that for the Big 5, right? And I guess I'll stop this video there.